Welcome to Seriously Sus, the podcast exposing shadiness with a side eye, hosted by Nanette and Miranda. And we're here to uncover the true crime stories and internet chaos that make you question everything. So get your side eye ready, because things are about to get seriously sus.
Welcome back to Seriously Sus, the show where we expose shadiness with a healthy dose of side eye. I'm Nanette.
And I'm Miranda. Today, we're talking about one of the most misunderstood concepts online, freedom of speech.
Everyone thinks it means you can say whatever you want, wherever you want, without consequences. Spoiler alert, that is not true.
Who would have thought?
Right?
The First Amendment gets thrown around like a get-out-of-jail-free card. But, plot twist, it's not. So, we're breaking down what the law really says, where it applies, what's not covered, and why influencers keep getting burned for the things they post.
And trust me, as someone who was a journalist for years, I know how this works. So let's get into it. What the law really means. The First Amendment says, Congress shall pass no law abridging the freedom of speech. That means the government cannot punish you for criticizing them. If you call the president a clown, the government can't arrest you for that. That's the core idea.
That's a core idea. And this is where people already get confused because they hear the phrase like freedom of speech and they stop listening after that. They just hear the vibe and not the definition.
Exactly. That sentence isn't talking about your boss. It is not talking about your job. It is not talking about social media platforms or brand deals. It's talking about the government, period. The First Amendment is a rule about what the government is not allowed to do to you. It is not a promise that everyone else has to put up with whatever you say.
And that distinction makes people really angry because consequences feel personal. Losing a job feels personal, losing your followers feels personal, but legally, those things are not censorship. They're just reactions.
You can criticize the government policy all day long. That's protected. But if you post false claims about someone and damage their reputation, you can and probably will be sued. And that's where people start yelling free speech without understanding what it actually protects. Freedom of speech is not freedom from consequences. It's freedom from government punishment. And the internet pretends those things are the same thing.
Right, like you could just say any old thing.
Right?
And here's the deeper truth. It only protects you from government censorship. It does not apply to private companies, social media platforms, or your employer. And it doesn't cover everything. There are categories of speech that aren't protected. Incitement of violence, like true threats, defamation, obscenity, and fighting words.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of speech is not freedom from accountability. Where it applies. The First Amendment is like a U.S. only thing. It does not travel with you. If you're abroad, you have to play by their rules, and influencers keep learning that the hard way.
This is one of the biggest misconceptions we see online. Americans really think the First Amendment follows them everywhere, like it's stamped on their passport. Like you land in another country and suddenly the U.S. Constitution law applies. It absolutely does not.
Every country has their own laws, its own cultural boundaries, and its own ideas about what counts as acceptable behavior in public. And influencers struggle with this like the most because their entire brand is like pushing limits for attention. What might get you demonized in the US can get you arrested somewhere else or charged criminally. And that shock is what we keep seeing over and over and over again.
Johnny Smolla is a perfect example. He's been indicted on some serious criminal charges in South Korea after a series of offensive live stream stunts and posts. These weren't harmless pranks. They crossed the line legally.
Okay, here's what happened. Somali, he filmed himself kissing and twerking near a statue honoring victims of wartime sexual slavery. Like, what the shit, dude?
Right.
He blasted loud music on public transport, which is, annoying, but...
Mm-hmm.
And he carried foul-smelling fish in just, around to just harass the pedestrians. He disrupted businesses and public spaces, and his bullshit led to multiple obstruction of business charges.
But that's just the start. He also was accused of creating deepfake sexual content of Korean streamers without consent. Under South Korea law, that's treated as a sex crime, carrying up to 10.5 years per count. Prosecutors say if convicted on all charges, including obstruction, deepfake creations, and sexual harassment, he could face up to 31 years in prison.
And people online were like genuinely shocked by this. Wait, prison for content? Which tells me they don't understand how seriously other countries treat harassment and sexual exploitation, especially when it comes to deepfake content. Like in the US, people still talk about deepfakes like they're edgy internet jokes or like nonsense. In South Korea, it's treated as a sex crime.
And that difference matters. This is where I was just trolling stops working as an excuse. Because internet doesn't erase harm. Because intent doesn't erase harm. The First Amendment definitely doesn't protect you when you're not even in the United States.
And it gets worse. Victims have filed formal petitions asking for maximum sentences, citing emotional harm and lack of remorse. In South Korea, those petitions, they strongly influence sentencing.
He really should go to jail. I mean,
how would you feel?
The statue thing alone. First of all, I never liked him beforehand. And like...
Right, but that's just douchey and disrespectful.
It is. Well, he is douchey and disrespectful. His
right.
whole thing. And
his whole brand is I'm a douche.
Yeah, just like that other kid, Jack Daugherty, who got arrested as soon as he turned 18, which he should have too. Like, I don't understand why young folks embrace these people and give them money and make them famous for harassing everyday people.
And deepfakes of sexual content, that's so gross.
That's a whole other level.
Like, if that happened to you, your daughter, your mother, your sister, your cousin, you'd be losing your mind and screaming for him to go to jail.
And I don't understand why United States doesn't have these same laws that everybody else does.
I agree.
I mean, if sharing pictures of somebody naked is already a crime in the United States, faking it should also be a crime.
Right.
It's the same damage to the person, whether it's their actual body or not. It's done without consent. Yeah, he deserves to go to jail. All of the people like that do. Like, complete disrespect for other countries, let alone, like, the First Amendment.
So, our official opinion, that guy is a douche. Hope he goes to jail.
Absolutely.
So, let's talk about next what's not covered. All right, here's a big one. And this is where most people get burned. Your employer, private companies, they can all fire you for speech that violates their policies. And they do. They do it all the time. And this is usually where people stop listening because, I don't know, they think it feels really deeply unfair.
Let's talk about what this actually looks like in real life. Because people always think it's theoretical. You work for a company. It doesn't matter what kind, tech, education, media, healthcare. You post something wild online under your real name, but even a burner account that gets traced back to you. Someone screenshots it. HR sees it. Your employer sees it. People immediately say, but I didn't do it at work, or I posted on my own time, or that's my personal account. And unfortunately, none of these things are protected the way people think they are.
Because your employer is not asking, like, was this legal? They're asking, is this a problem for us? Is this going to hurt our reputation? And is this going to piss off clients, students, readers, advertisers, or sponsors? Is this going to end up a headline with our company's name attached to it?
Employers are not constitutional scholars. They're risk managers. Their job is not to protect your right to pop off online. Their job is to protect the company. And it's a really uncomfortable truth for a lot of people because it feels like punishment. But legally, it's a business decision. And also, if you actually read your onboarding or your company's policy, I guarantee there's something in there about social media. So it doesn't matter if it's your personal account and you're not doing it online, the company has the right to dictate what can be traced back to them and what they're willing to deal with. Companies don't fire people because they hate free speech. They fire people because they hate lawsuits and bad press and sponsors pulling out. So when someone says, I was fired for my opinion, what they usually mean is, my opinion cost my employer money, and the Constitution does not require your boss to absorb that cost.
Your opinion was probably douchey.
I mean, all of the people that were cheering that Charlie Kirk got killed and then suddenly got fired because companies are like, oh no, we're not getting into politics, so we don't want our people going and like blatantly cheering somebody's death because, you reflect on us.
Right.
So don't be stupid.
Really that simple. And the First Amendment, it doesn't require like a private company to keep employing you if your public behavior becomes a liability to them. Even if what you said was legal. And this is where people get really confused. They confuse like the law and fairness. And they are such different things.
Yes.
Sometimes it can feel unfair but still be completely lawful. And sometimes things are legal that are terrible.
After Charlie Kirk's death, dozens of people, including professors and sports writers, were fired for posting the nasty comments online like we had said. A lot of them said the same thing. I was exercising my freedom of speech. And they were. But the First Amendment doesn't stop an employer from saying, you're out. That's the part people really struggle with. Because they hear, you were exercising freedom of speech, and assumes that that should end the conversation. But legally, it doesn't. Again, just to rewind back to what we said, freedom of speech is about criticizing the government. It doesn't protect you beyond that.
Just the government.
It's a very specific thing.
It's right in there. You can be within your rights and still violate company policy. Policies are not laws, and they don't have to meet the same standards. Employees are allowed to set their expectations for conduct even outside the office, especially if your job involves the public in any way. Professors represent schools, journalists represent publications, and influencers represent brands.
And keep in mind, nowadays almost every company is at will, which means they can fire you at any point without reason. So you've got two strikes against you now. If you're posting something that violates company policy and they can fire you at will, they don't need a reason.
Oh, that's a very good point.
And when you publicly clash with the values or image of that institution or business, they cut ties. Not because the government told them to, but because they chose to. And a lot of people say, well, that's just cancel culture. But legally, it's not censorship. It's contract ending. It's an at-will employment decision. It's the company saying, you're no longer worth it for us.
And here's like a hard part. So people don't really want to grasp this part. It's intent does not really matter. You might not have even meant harm. You might have been joking or angry or grieving or, just reacting to the moment. But employers don't have to weigh your intent. They just weigh the outcome.
Screenshots don't come with context, and the internet doesn't wait for explanations. Once something goes viral, the damage calculation has already started. That's why these decisions feel fast, cold, sometimes brutal, because they're happening under pressure, and it's the business looking out for itself and doing damage control.
HR experts say it all the time. Freedom of speech protects you from, what do we say? Government censorship, not workplace consequences. And it sounds harsh, but it's accurate. HR isn't asking whether your take was nuanced. They're asking, is this crap going to turn into a lawsuit or a boycott or a sponsor pulling out? Once that risk exists, the clock starts ticking, and it does not tick in your favor.
Now let's talk about social media platforms, because this is where people really get angry. Platforms are private companies too. They can ban you at any time. This part makes people furious for some reason, because getting banned feels like censorship. It feels like silencing. It feels personal.
But platforms are not public squares. They are businesses with advertisers, with terms of service, with content policies that go far beyond what the law requires. The First Amendment sets the floor, not the ceiling. Platforms are allowed to be stricter than the law if they freaking want to. And they are, because controversy scares advertisers.
Free speech doesn't mean free reach. You can say it, but no one is obligated to amplify it. You do not have a constitutional right to an audience, or a platform, or to be monetized. Those are privileges, not protections, and privileges can and will be taken away.
People are often out there confusing access with rights. So when they lose their access to these platforms and stuff, it feels like losing a right. But legally, it isn't one. And that's the disconnect that makes people feel really blindsided, because no one explains this before it happens. Everyone learns the hard way. And once it happens, it's too late to argue constitutional law, because the Constitution was never part of the decision to begin with.
The takeaway here is uncomfortable but important. The First Amendment limits the government. It does not protect you from employers. It does not protect you from platforms, especially in a digital world where everything is public, permanent, and searchable.
So one more time. It protects you from
From
the
the
government.
Point blank, period.
That's it. Consequences are still a thing. Now, let's get into some real world examples of how it's played out for celebrities and influencers.
Justine Sacco, the tweet that ruined a career. I am sure you all heard of this, and this is a perfect example of what we're talking about today. So let's start with one of the earliest and most famous examples of how fast the internet can destroy someone's life. And what makes it so wild is how small it started.
It started with a tweet, a horrible tweet. All right. In 2013, Justine Sacco, she was a PR executive at IAC. So a PR exec, come on. She wasn't.
Of all the people that should know.
Right, she should know. She should know.
There is literally no excuse.
She should know it only protects you from the government. I'm just saying.
Right. And she should know what this tweet would have done.
Right. So she wasn't famous. She wasn't an influencer. She only had about 170 followers, which is really basically nothing by today's standards.
So right before boarding a flight to South Africa, she had the audacity to tweet, "Going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white." As a PR person.
Yeah.
Like, it literally just, I don't even know.
I mean, first of all, anybody with half a brain cell would know that
This is going to go bad.
What the fuck?
And now I have to question, like, does she actually have any academic background in PR? Like, did she get a degree in it? Or is this just like a made-up thing? Because everyone should know better than this.
Right?
So she tweets, and then she gets on the plane. So there's no Wi-Fi. She has no idea what's happening. She's just on a flight to South America, hoping she doesn't get AIDS.
Africa.
Oh, yes.
So, meanwhile, that tweet exploded. People started sharing it, reacting to it, dragging her for the racism, ignorance, and privileges. As they should. The hashtag, "Has Justine landed yet?" started trending worldwide. And people were like literally waiting for her plane to land just so they could watch her life fall apart in real time.
Talk about the world being a peanut gallery, because everyone was just waiting to see what happened. And by the time she touched down, it already had. She was fired before she even got off the plane. No meeting, no warning, no explanation, just gone, as she should have been.
And the fallout didn't stop there. She received death threats. Her name became synonymous with Twitter villain. She later said she couldn't get a job for months, even years, because her name was so toxic online.
And are you really going to hire a PR person that does something this stupid?
I wouldn't. She's clearly not very good at her job.
No, not at all.
And so here's the thing. What she said wasn't illegal, but it was offensive enough that her employer didn't want to be associated with. And again, just because things aren't illegal don't mean they aren't immoral.
Right. This case is the blueprint. It shows how fast consequences can happen and how permanently they can be. Screenshots don't expire, internet doesn't forget, and the world is waiting to watch you fail. But again, this is not freedom of speech. This did not go after the government.
No.
This was you saying something incredibly stupid and racist and despicable.
You suck, and you got called out for it.
As right you should. And the world rejoiced.
Yeah, yay. Fireworks.
Now, someone that just raised my hackles. Rachel Zegler. Brand speech is not protected speech. So, let's start with a case that really highlights how badly people understand free speech in the workplace. That's Ms. Rachel Zegler.
This one's important because nothing illegal happened. Nobody got arrested. Nobody was silenced by the government. And yet people, including Rachel, were screaming free speech anyway.
Rachel was starring in the Disney live-action Snow White. So, you know this one. This is the one that was like, weird. And Snow White was so bad. Like, she doesn't need to be safe.
Did you watch it?
I watched it. Oh, my gosh.
I didn't watch it.
The girl can sing, but she cannot act. At least not movie act. Maybe the projections she does are good for Broadway, but, like, it was rough. It was really rough. But this was a huge role. A massive corporate brand. I mean, this was Disney's very first animation. that they
Right.
were doing.
It's no freaking white man. Like,
And we all know Disney, so this was carefully controlled marketing machine. While promoting the movie, she not only bashed the original and beloved version in multiple interviews during the press tour, she posted political statements on social media, including saying Trump supporters should die, and included Free Palestine message in the same tweet where she was talking about thanking fans for the Snow White trailer. So, there's such a thing as business and personal, but you walked them all up in one and we're shocked that people had some things to say about that?
right, you're shocked that Disney, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're
Right.
not in this.
We're trying to sell a fairy tale here, like
A family-friendly fairy tale. This is a
Right.
children's film.
Right? Wars and politics have no place in this, despite her trying to make it that way throughout the entire press tour.
That's a key detail, because people will say she posted it on her own account. But she didn't post it as a private citizen with a random job. I mean, even though there's still consequences to that.
Mm-hmm.
She posted it as a lead actress of a Disney film during the promotional campaign, attached directly to the brand.
And surprise, Disney did not like that. And I guarantee you, all of these film stars, there's a media junket clause in their contract. They're expected to show up at X amount of whatever, do X amount of interviews, and behavior is written out. Apparently, Disney needs to do it better to clarify for the younger generation.
That maybe don't tweet that people need to die in the
Yeah.
same tweet as your movie promo?
Right? That's not exactly a way to get people to go to see the movie.
I mean,
But-
I don't care which political side you're on. That doesn't go there.
Right. And just because this wasn't illegal doesn't mean it wasn't risky, especially for Disney. This is Disney. Again, family friendly. We're aiming this at children.
In Disney, they only murder the mother.
Right? According to reporting, executives were concerned about the backlash, marketing impact, and brand alignment, which, they
Really?
should have been, which is corporate speak for this makes our lives harder. Rumor has it that the boss actually flew out to California to tell her personally to knock it off.
That's so crazy. If your boss has a fly-in to tell you to calm your tits, man.
Yeah, I mean, really, when the entire internet is like, oh my God, we hate this girl, it wasn't even so much about her politics, but yes, it was. But it was also her entitlement and her bashing the original film. So it's not even just the politics. It's the way she came across, how she bashed the film. Like, she's just said so many wrong things.
Mm-hmm. So Rachel later acknowledged that she still stands by her beliefs. But, I mean, she also admitted that she learned the difference between intent and impact. I guess that's a free speech lesson right there.
Mm-hmm. You can believe something. You can say something. But your employer does not have to like it or tolerate it. The First Amendment didn't save her from internal pressure because the First Amendment doesn't control Disney. Brand speech is not protected speech, especially when your job is the brand.
Right, you chose that job.
Mm-hmm.
So
She just annoys me.
Jimmy Kimmel, platforms are not owed to you. And this one is really big right now. So this next case, it made people absolutely lose their minds. They still are. It's
Right.
free speech about this. So after Jimmy Kimmel made comments on a show about political reactions to Charlie Kirk's death on Jimmy Kimmel Live was suspended by ABC.
And people immediately said, that's a First Amendment violation. Jimmy Kimmel wasn't arrested. He wasn't fined. The government didn't shut him up. His employer pulled the show. ABC is a private company. And shockingly, owned by Disney.
Man, Disney does not play.
Nope. And they decided the situation was too volatile. Which, again, private company is their right.
I mean, I like Jimmy Kimmel as much as the next person, but company policy is company
You
policy.
gotta do what your bosses want if you want to keep your job. It's that simple.
That's not censorship. I mean, that's a contract decision. The First Amendment protects you from what? Government punishment, that's right. It does not guarantee you a nightly time slot on a network. It does not guarantee you advertisers. People confuse with being allowed to speak with being entitled to be amplified, and it's not the same thing.
Jimmy Kimmel had free speech. What he didn't have was a right to ABC's platforms. Platforms, again, are privileges, not constitutional guarantees, and they can be taken away.
But hey, dude, if you go put your show on something else, I'll still be watching, Just So, Karen Atna, even journalists are not immune to this. Did you guys know that? Crazy. This next case surprises people the most because if anyone should be protected by free speech, right, it's journalists. Right? Journalists?
Yes. But again, only against criticizing the government.
Government.
Karen Atta was an opinion columnist at the Washington Post. After Charlie Kirk's death, she posted commentary on social media condemning political violence and criticizing America's response to gun violence. She did not celebrate the death. She did not call for harm. And yet, she was fired.
People immediately said, how can a newspaper fire a journalist for speech? The answer is easily. Because she worked for a private employer with internal policies. The Post, it argued that her post violated their standards and created an internal risk.
Free speech organizations warned about the chilling effects. But legally, still not a First Amendment violation. Because the government did not fire her, her employer did. Free speech does not override workplace policy, not even in a newsroom, not even when your job is literally writing opinions. The Constitution limits what?
Government.
It does not control your boss.
Although it's still crazy because your job is writing opinions and you get fired for writing your opinion. That wasn't even...
Well, what I don't understand, having worked in the newsroom as an editor, is it's not like you write something and it automatically posts. Like, it goes through a chain of editing.
It was okayed by a lot of people before it got there, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, this probably shouldn't have reached the light of day if it violated internal policy.
But someone should have caught it before it got that far.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next, I think we're going to talk about the teachers fired for their posts in their own time, right?
Yep. The whole myth, on my own time.
Mm-hmm.
The next one hits a little bit closer to home for a lot of people. And again, so y'all know, I also did communications for public schools in New York and New Orleans. And I can tell you, every single school has a social media policy. You are a teacher. You end up friending your students' parents. You represent the school whether you want to admit it or not. And over the years, multiple teachers were fired for posts they made on their personal social media accounts, whether political, hateful, or conduct seemingly unfitting their profession. The reasons are numerous, and I guarantee they were all backed by the school's social media policy.
I've heard of some teachers with OnlyFans too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They get fired for that. All right, so the argument is always the same, though, and just like every other example. I posted on my own time. It was my personal account, and that's my free speech. And again, that's not how any of this works.
Public school teachers are public employees, which actually gives them some First Amendment protection, but not unlimited protection. Again, the protection is against them saying anything about the government. Courts look at whether the speech disrupts the workplace, whether it undermines trust with students, parents, or the community, whether it conflicts with the mission of the institution. Your school district does not have to prove your post was illegal. They just have to show it became a problem.
Being off the clock does not make you consequence proof. Posting from home does not erase your role, especially when your job is built on trust and authority. The First Amendment does not require a school district to keep employing you. On my own time is not some magic shield. Chrissy Teigen. There's no expiration date for consequences. This case shows that even being beloved, it doesn't protect you. Time passing doesn't protect you. None of it. Chrissy Teigen was one of the most popular people on Twitter. Funny, relatable, constantly online. She had built this entire brand about being around, like being outspoken and edgy.
Until old tweets resurfaced. Tweets where she had encouraged self-harm and harassment toward other celebrities, including Courtney Stodden. And once these tweets resurfaced, public reaction was swift. People were shocked, not just by what she said, but how long it had gone unchecked.
Brands reacted immediately. Macy's dropped her cookware line. Bloomingdale's followed. Partnerships disappeared almost overnight. Chrissy, she issued a public apology and stepped away from social media for months. I mean, she eventually returned, but her public image was permanently altered.
This case is important because it shows that fame doesn't insulate you. In some ways, it makes the consequences worse, because the bigger your platform, the bigger the backlash.
Again, nothing she tweeted was illegal, but it violated public expectations and brand tolerance. And that's enough.
Even if it's legal, you can lose brand deals, followers, and your reputation overnight. Free speech doesn't protect you from being canceled, no matter how long ago you made those posts.
It doesn't. So when does free speech actually work?
At this point in the episode, you might be thinking, okay, so free speech doesn't protect you from your boss, your platform, your brand? Does it protect you from anyone? Does it protect anyone from anything? And the answer is yes. Absolutely yes.
The problem isn't that the First Amendment is weak, it's that people keep aiming it at the wrong target. Let's talk about what it looks like when free speech is used correctly and actually works. The election worker who spoke to Jon Stewart. So this is one of the cleanest, clearest examples of the First Amendment doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
A local election worker appeared on The Problem with Jon Stewart and spoke about safety concerns for poll workers. She talked about threats, intimidation, and how dangerous the job had become. She wasn't leaking confidential information. She wasn't speaking as part of her job duties. She was speaking as a private citizen on a matter of public concern. And after she spoke out, she was removed from her role.
Here's the key part. Her employer was the government. And that's when the First Amendment kicks in. She sued, arguing that the government retaliated against her for protected speech. And the city settled.
The settlement was quiet, but a powerful signal. It meant the free speech claim had real legit weight. This is the First Amendment working the way people think it works. Citizen speech, public issue, government retaliation. That's the formula.
Notice what's missing here? No private employer, no brand deals, no platform terms of service. This wasn't about vibes or PR. This was about the government punishing speech. And that's exactly what the First Amendment forbids. This case matters because it shows the Constitution isn't fake, it's just very specific.
Protesters, when arrests don't stick. Another place where free speech works is protest. Actual, old school, core First Amendment activity.
So over the past year, we've seen protesters arrested at demonstrations. Anti-war protests, ceasefire protests, political protests. And in multiple cases, charges were dropped. Not because the protesters were popular, not because everyone even agreed with them, but it's because the arrests cross constitutional lines.
In Las Vegas, more than 100 people were arrested during an anti-ICE protest in June 2025. Police made mass arrests, even though many protesters were nonviolent and gathered in public space. But a few months later, the Las Vegas city attorney dropped charges against 90 protesters.
Legal experts had flagged the arrest as potentially unconstitutional because the protesters were engaged in peaceful political expression. The city didn't say we support the message. They said essentially, these cases are not going to stand.
We saw something similar in Los Angeles, where hundreds of students were arrested during a protest at UCLA and USC. After reviewing more than 300 protest-related arrests, the Los Angeles city attorney dropped the majority of the cases.
A judge even agreed that, some prosecutions appeared selective, meaning protesters were being charged because of their viewpoint, not their conduct.
Peaceful protest, peaceful, being key, peaceful protest in public spaces, another key, is protected speech. The government doesn't get to arrest you just because your message is inconvenient to them. Once citizen rights attorneys get involved, cities often back off quietly. Once the government realizes it can't defend the rest constitutionally. That's free speech working. Not loudly, not dramatically, but effectively.
Public universities are another place where the First Amendment actually applies because public universities are like government entities. In the past year, students at public colleges were threatened with discipline for political speech and protests. They had suspensions, campus bans, sanctions, and in several cases, schools reversed course.
Why? Because controversial speech is still protected speech. Public universities don't get to punish students just because speech causes a backlash. Once lawyers show up and say First Amendment, schools suddenly remember the rules again. And again, government actor, citizen speech, public concern, same formula.
Another area where free speech actually worked this year was journalism, especially journalists covering protests.
In Sanford, California, a student journalist, Dylan Gohill, was arrested while reporting on a pro-Palestine campus protest. Stanford University publicly supported the criminal charges against him, claiming he had no First Amendment protection. A Clara County district attorney dropped all charges. The DA ultimately disagreed with the university and had him cleared completely.
That's the First Amendment doing what it's supposed to do. Journalists have the right to observe and report on protests involving public institutions. And arresting someone just for doing that, it does not survive legal scrutiny.
We saw a similar case in northern Kentucky where City Beat reporter Melanie Fenning was arrested while covering a protest on the Roebling Suspension Bridge. She was initially charged with felony rioting, but after intervention by the ACLU of Kentucky, all charges were dropped. The county attorney explicitly acknowledged that journalists should not be punished simply for being present where news happens. I mean, that is literally their job.
Right, that's how you get the news.
Right? And again, public space.
Right, these were not private employers making decisions. These are government actors who overreached, and they really had to reverse their course.
When government pressure crosses the line, there's one more way free speech shows up correctly. And this one's subtle. Government jawboning. That's when government officials pressure private companies to silence speech for them. They don't pass a law. They don't make an arrest. They just strongly suggest consequences.
Over the past year, jawboning became a major First Amendment issue, especially involving broadcasters and social media. One of the most visible examples involved FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, who publicly warned that ABC affiliates could face consequences over content he disliked.
Legal scholars across the political spectrum flagged those statements as potentially unconstitutional. Why? Because the government cannot threaten regulatory punishment to suppress speech.
After intense public scrutiny, hearings, and legal analysis, officials walked back the rhetoric. Congressional hearings were held specifically to examine whether those actions cross First Amendment lines. The key point is this. When government pressure becomes explicit, alarm bells went off, and restraint followed. The retreat matters. It shows that the First Amendment still has teeth when people recognize the violation. Even powerful officials don't get to intimidate speech into silence.
Courts have been very clear about this. The government can't do indirectly what is forbidden to do directly.
That's right. Every one of these examples has something in common. The government was the actor. The speech involved public issues, and when challenged, the government backed down. That's the First Amendment working correctly. Not protecting people from consequences, but protecting them from government punishment.
So to recap, here's the difference between the cases that worked and the ones that didn't. Free speech protects you from what?
The government.
The government. It is not a shield you wave at your boss. It does not protect you from your employer. It does not protect you from your platform. It does not protect you from public backlash. It's a boundary the government is not allowed to cross. And when it does cross it, the Constitution steps in.
It's supposed to.
Yep.
The takeaway? The First Amendment in the United States is about government censorship. Not a license to say anything you want without consequences. Free speech isn't dead, it's just misunderstood. Use it in the right place and it still does exactly what it was built to do. Protect people from government punishment for speaking their minds. It doesn't protect you from being canceled, losing your job, your sponsors, or your freedom abroad. It's a limit on government power, not a guarantee of social approval. The internet blurs those lines constantly.
And again, to reiterate, the First Amendment is only valid in the United States.
Right.
You cannot claim free speech, First Amendment, when you are not in the United States, which was something I thought everyone knew, but apparently I was incredibly wrong. So when people aim the First Amendment at Disney, Twitter, or HR, of course it fails. When they aim it at the government, it works. That's not a flaw. That's exactly how it was designed. And influencers especially get hurt when they believe the hype. You can be legally allowed to say something and still lose your job. You can be within your rights and still lose your platform. You can be loud, viral, and completely unprotected. So think before you post. Not because you're scared, but because consequences are real. And once they hit, there's no undo button. And remember, being sus online can cost you big time.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into free speech. If you learned something or found some other point to this side eye in the argument, be sure to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. We welcome civil discourse.
But remember, before you post a hot take a second and ask yourself, is this worth getting fired over? And when someone is playing the victim for getting fired over their opinion, ask yourself, would you want them representing your business? As always, keep your side eye ready, stay skeptical, and stay sus. Until next time.
You've just turned into Seriously Sus with Nanette and Miranda, your ultimate source of sus with a side eye. Thank you for hanging out with us. If today's episode made you think twice, hit that like button, subscribe, follow at Seriously Sus Podcast for more deep dives into crime, drama, cultural chaos, and general hilarity.
Yes.
And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay sus. Outro music, la 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 la.
Remember, it's government.
Government.